Welcome to this video. This is the practice skills review starting on EX3-18 for Module 3 of Excel. So the first thing it tells you to do is open up the EX3-labs. That's what you're going to save it as, EX3-2, and save it as labs. Remember, you need to save it as the book, what it tells you, followed with your initials. So I have done the labs already, so I'm just going to click on that, and this would be the file that I would turn in. So that has the correct name and my initials on it. That is letter A on the first quarter worksheet. Select the range B3 to D9 and use the Quick Analyst tool to enter the first quarter revenue totals. Now remember, you have to be a little careful on that you get the right totals in here. So once you select it, you should see the little icon over here, which is a Quick Analyst tool. In order to get the totals, we obviously have to go to Totals. Make sure you don't use this one, because it will sum below. We want to use this sum over here, and you can see the little blue over here. It tells you where the sum is going to be. And here you can see the yellow with the red border in here, so you can see that's going to be the sum on the right, and you can see it's actually filling it in before we even click it. Once I click on it, it's going to be permanent. So now we have the first quarter revenue in there, and I'm looking at the book to make sure everything is peachy keen, which it's not, because there's going to be a change in January. So right now this is what it is, but it's not accurate. We're going to change it later on, and you'll see that it will become accurate. So that was B. In cell G3, use the revenue totals in E3 and F3 to calculate the percent increase. Now, they don't give you the formula to do that, so if you want to write it down, that you can. Remember, we're going to start with the equal sign, and we're going to use the parentheses. So we're using the left parentheses here. And it wants to do, so let's read it again. It wants to calculate the percent increase. So what we're going to do here is we want to get the totals of E3 and F3 to calculate the percent increase in revenue from the previous quarter. So what we have to do is click on E3 and subtract F3. Now remember, F3 is the previous quarter, so the change in revenue is going to be the first quarter from the previous quarter. Now we need to... Okay, so what we're going to do now is we need to calculate we have to calculate the percentage, so we're going to click on the previous quarter here. Now we don't need the absolute, because we're going to copy it down, and we want to change that from F3 to F4. Once we get done here, we need the second parentheses here. Actually, we do not. So let's hit enter and see what happens. So that gives us 7.7%, 7.6% in here. So we're going to format to make that look a little better. So it tells us to format to percent style with 2 decimal places. Well, you can click on this, and it may give you the 2 decimal places or not. I'm more of I like to go down here and choose percent, or go down here and choose percent, where I can change the decimal in here. So either whatever we want to do it, you can click on this, you can just choose percent, or you can click on here. The drop down here gives you the most things that you can do in here. It gives you a little bit more settings than the others do as well. So then we'll just copy this down. And so we have a problem here. What happened was it just copied everything down here in here. So we have a little bit of a problem. So E3, F3. So let's go down and see what we have. E3 minus F3 divided by E3. So we have an issue. Now, I'll tell you what the issue is if this happens to you. It's not recalculating everything. So I may have my calculations set to manual. So let's go to formulas, and let's see what our calculation options are, and they're set at manual. So I wanted to leave it on manual because I wanted to show you if something does not copy right, it doesn't recalculate, then just go in here and check your settings in here. So I'm going to change this back to automatic, and it did. Or you could just click on calculate now if you want to do it. So you can see that actually changed. When I went in and saw the formulas had adjusted properly, then that was kind of a dead giveaway that we have a problem with the calculation. So you see that in one of the later things that we have to do in this exercise. So now we're going to do, we copied, that was E. Now we're going to build a logical formula with the if. And you can type in what you want. So basically what you're doing is you're checking to see if G3 is greater than a certain percentage, and you're going to put in met or missed. I'm not a big fan of typing all of that. So we're going to go to H3, which is right here. And instead of typing it in, I'm going to go to logical and see if there's an if, which there is. And now I can just let this fill in. It's a little bit easier for me to do it. So let's go and see what it tells us. It says if G3 is greater than B10, and it needs to be absolute. So we're doing the percent increase. It's greater than or equal to, and we want B10, which is basically 10%. Now remember, because when we copy this down, we don't want it to be B11, B12, B13, so we're going to hit F4. Or you could just type in the dollar signs yourself. Then the next thing we're going to do is type in met. And remember, you don't need the quote marks because it'll fill it in for you. If you were typing it in, you would. And then missed. I like to hit the tab key to see what it's going to show, and the result's going to be missed. Now we can copy this down. And we're good to go. This would be a good time to save it. That was number 3, the first one, copy the cell down, which we just did. Enter your name in the center section of the footer in the first quarter sheet, which we're already in. So to get to the footer, we go to page layout and page setup. And then you'll see header and footer. And you're going to click on custom footer. Notice how it's broken down to left, center, and right. So in the center, I'm just going to type my name. And we'll click on OK. And boom, this is what it's going to look like. And I'll go to print preview so you can see it down over here. It's always a good idea to click on print preview when you can. So we're good there. Good time to save it as well. Remember, the more times you save it, the less work you have to recreate if you make a mistake and have to go back. That was number 3. Number 4, we're going to do the round. Now remember that the round actually changes the value where the, if you're doing the formatting to 2 decimal places, it doesn't change it. It just changes the appearance of it. So, in number 4, in B cell, we're going to use the auto sum list arrow to do a function that does the average first quarter revenues in column E. So we need to click in B12 here. And I'm going to go to home and choose average. So I'll click the auto sum, I'll choose average, and then it tries to anticipate it. Normally it's going to go up. Well, we don't want this column here. And notice that it just goes straight up. As soon as that hits a number cell, it starts going all the way up till it hits a non-numeric. But we want the previous, let's see where we want. It wants, I believe, the first quarter revenue in E. So we're just going to select and drag that. You could have typed it in here as well. And then we hit the enter key. So that gives us 177,568.286. So if we round it off to do decimal places, it will actually change it to 177,568.000. And I'll show you that when we get done. So let's see. We did that. Use the formula autocomplete to edit this formula to include the round function. So let's go in here, and to use the autocomplete, I'm just going to click in front of the A right after the equals and start typing in the round. And you can see there's the round. Then you're going to double click on it. Sometimes it's a little tricky. There we go. And notice that it gives you the brackets already, the parentheses, puts it in here. So now all we have to do is type in a comma, and we want 0 and the other parentheses. And notice that it had given us what we need to type in. Once I hit the enter key, it changes. So just to show you what it actually looks like now, let's increase the decimals. So notice that you can see it's 0000. So let's go back to this here. So it actually changed the value. That was B. Correct any errors and save your work. So number 4, build a statistical formula with the count A. What count A just basically says, if the cell's empty, don't count it. If it's not empty, then count it. It has nothing to do whether it has a number in it. It's just whether or not the cell is empty or not. So let's go and find where it wants us to put it. So in B11, we're going to type it in here as B11. So what we'll do is I'll go to formulas, and the count A should be in statistical. And it is here. Notice the description here, counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So here it's going to give us 8 because it's going to go B3 to B10, but we don't really want that. We want the cities in here. So let's do that. That should give us 7. And which it does, and we'll click on OK, and we're good to go there. Then create a custom format for the percentages in column G so that negative values appear in red parentheses. Now that sounds a lot harder than it really is. So here is our column G, and we can select them all. Let's go to Home, click on Conditional Formatting, and it really doesn't give you a whole lot here, but highlight cell rules would definitely be the first one you want to try, which happens to be the right one. And then it says greater than, less than. Well, we want anything that's negative, so that would be less than here. Less than what? So let's just make it less than 0. And then we don't want the light fill with dark text. There's an option here that just gives us the red text. So let's drop down here, and you can see red text. And you can do a custom format if you didn't like that one. And we'll click on OK. So you can see that the two of them that are negative have a red value here as well. So let's go and continue. See, format the revenue values in B3 to F9 and in B12 using the counter number format with no decimal places. So it goes B3 to F9. So I'm going to shift click here and F9. And I want to include, I believe it's B12. Let's double check. And B12. So I can hold the control key down and select it here as well. I could have done the formatting and then clicked in here and hit F4, which would repeat the very last thing, which is the formatting. So it wants us to do accounting with no decimal places. So now we're going to click this arrow here. We're going to choose accounting, and we're going to change this to no decimal places, and we'll use a $ symbol. We could have chose this here, and notice the drop down here gives you some other options. We really want to use the English $, but then you might have to use these to adjust it to 0. So we're in good shape now. That was all of 5, so let's save our work here. And always a good reason is make sure that you get rid of any selection so that if you would accidentally type something, you don't want anything to disappear. So now I'll save my work. That was all the 5. Enter the date function. And they tell you to enter the date, which gives you today in there, and then they tell you to delete it. But let me show you a pitfall of not deleting it, and you'll see in a second. So in D12, enter report date. So let's go to D12. We'll type in report date. And then I'm using my right arrow key to go to the next thing. And it wants us to type in today. So let's go to formulas and date and time. And we'll just use today, which is right here. And we'll click OK. And it gives us today. Well, but then it says delete it. It's saying, oh, well, I don't need to delete it. I'll just redo it. And let's do the date and time. And this time we'll use date. Now make sure that you do the year, month, and day. If you do it any other way, it's going to change stuff. So let's go in here and notice right now we have today plus. So that's why you need to make sure that you delete the today first, because this isn't going to replace it. It's just going to add to it. So let's go. We can right click and choose clear contents, which is here, or you can delete it. So now let's go back in and do the date and time and choose date. And notice that it has the year, month, and day. So we're used to doing the month, day, and the year. So we're going to type in 2021. I believe it's 4/3. Let me double check. Yes, it is. So we're just going to type in 4. And we're going to type in 3. And let's see what happens. So now it gives us the actual 4/3 the way we want it. In cell style, use cell style rows 20, accent 1, first row and first column to do D12 to E12. So we're going to make this a little bit nicer. So let's go to home, and here's our cell styles. And this should be the rows that we want. And boom. That was D. Activate cell A1 and save your work. I'm going to hit Control Home, and that will take me to A1. Then I'm going to save my work. So now I have done all of 6, and I'm working on number 7. Tells us to activate the formula documentation sheet. So we'll click on the formula documentation sheet. Then it says to add a stack fraction worksheet, the worksheet. Well, geez, what is that? Well, if you go back to the original module, it shows you how to do that. So we're going to click on Insert, and we're going to go to Equations. Now, don't choose the drop-down arrow for this one. Click on the equation itself. And then it gives us all kinds of things here. So here is our fractions. So let's use the drop-down arrow here, and this is a stacked fraction. Now, be very careful. Right now, it's going to have you do something in the middle. We want to be in the very top. So what you can do if you're having trouble with it, just increase the size over here, and that makes it a little bit easier to click in there. And it tells us we want first quarter revenue minus previous quarter revenue. So we'll do the parentheses, first quarter revenue, and I spelled that wrong, minus previous quarter. And then we'll click down over here, and we'll type in over previous quarter revenue. When you do this, then you go back. It gives you why you calculated something and how you calculated it, and it makes a little bit more sense what you're doing. So we're going to put it in A9, and that fits nice there. And you could also change this if you wanted to. Change the font here. Let's see if it lets you select it from here. So let's click on Select A. And since I have a box selected, I can just choose Control A and it will select only the contents there. So I could change the font if I wanted to anything here. Let's just change it there. We'll make it bold. And I can increase the font. So you can do basically anything you want. Then we'll just drag it back over here. So again, that is cosmetic things. The book doesn't tell you that you have to do that. If you feel like experimenting a little, that's always a good idea. So we just did 7. We moved the equation and we're going to save it and go back to A1. Now we're going to go to number 8, control the worksheet calculations. So it wants us to do the first quarter worksheet. And we're going to kind of undo what we did before. So it wants us to go into formulas. And let's see our calculation options, which is set it automatic. So let's just make it manual. And then it wants us to change the value in B3 to 7,200. Let's go change B3 to 7,200. And you should see nothing happen. So let's change it to 7,200. And you don't see anything change. This first quarter revenue should change, and this should change. So let's go in and click on Calculate Now and see what happens. And then everything got updated. So if you take a look on figure 318, then that's pretty much everything. Check here. So let's do a couple cosmetic things to make it look nicer. Number 1, I may have missed it in here because I remember doing it, but I might not have had to do it. Let's center this. And we're going to center this horizontally. So I think that may make things look nice and may not. You know, again, that's a game time decision. But also a rule of thumb that I always do is I take everything here. I like everything. Actually, I should do all this. Let's leave this out for right now so we can undo it. And change to middle here. And I just think that looks a little nicer. Now, if we change this to middle, I'm going to hit F4. You may like the way it looks, you may not. I kind of think it looks nice, but people may like it better at the bottom. But I personally think that looks a little bit nicer as well. So that is everything here. I'm going to save my work. And then I'm going to open the floor up for questions in here. So remember, if you don't ask questions, then I can't help you work. So please feel free to ask questions in there as well. Hopefully this worked. And, let's go and let's make a little bit nicer here. I'm a big cosmetic person. So I'm going to make this bold. And maybe I'll do italic. Maybe, maybe not. And let's do a border around it. So I'm going to click on more borders so I can do some things in here. Let's go to more borders. And let's go to outline. And let's do double. And let's make it a fancy color. We'll do the same color as the average quarter. And let's see what that looks like. Apparently not very good. So that might have something to do what's within here. It shouldn't. So let's go back and do that again and see if something got missed. So, and I think, let's see, border. So we want outline. We want the double. All right. So we can see there's an issue here because it's not changing it to that. So that's a quick way to do it. So let's go to none and let's go to outline And now we got something, finally. We didn't get anything before. Let's go to red. And it's not really changing. So when that happens, it's because something is overriding it. So let's go and see what happens here when we click OK. And there we have it. Okay. It's working there now. So it looks pretty good here. And the color is still not working. So something's overriding the color. And it's probably the format of the cell here that's overriding it. So that's okay. That's not a real big deal. So you could also do this. There's so many different things that you can do. So that was in a different cell. So again, go around playing around with things that you just want to experiment with and have fun. So you learn more by experimenting. So that's everything that I have right now.